Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and a big thank you to our Phoenix School class for getting into like a big synchronized dance thing going on during that countdown. You guys rock. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and I know we've got a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, but if you are new to us today, we are all about bringing exploration, adventure, and science. I can speak English into classrooms around the world. Today actually epitomizes what we do best. Earlier today, we were live in the rainforest canopy in Costa Rica. We got to hang out with David Makepeace. He's the eclipse guy who's seen 26 eclipses around planet Earth. And today we're going to wrap up the day with our third broadcast on a really, really cool topic with a new speaker for us. So David Blount is joining us today. He's from the University of Utah. And like me, he is obsessed with big toothy predators. He gets the chance to study human-animal interactions with some of the coolest predators on planet Earth. And specifically today, as you'll know if you saw the bio, we're going to talk about the world's only migrating bears. I must admit, I'm an ecologist by background, which means I study how animals interact, how they live together, where they live, and I had no idea that any bears migrated. So this is going to be a real treat for me as well. I hope you're as excited as I am. And without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to David to blow your mind about his amazing fieldwork that he gets to do in Turkey. So David, welcome to the broadcast, man. So nice to have you here today.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to start and get to talk with y'all. Like you said, my name is David, and I am almost a doctor. I am my fourth year of a PhD study at the University of Utah, which means that hopefully this time next year, I'll be Dr. David, but we'll see. And so today I get to talk to you about a project that's near and dear to my heart, following the world's only population of migratory brown bears. So as we begin, I know that I've kind of heard a little bit about where people are from, but I wanted to know kind of more where exactly we are. So while y'all are kind of maybe getting that information in, this is actually a photo of me trying to find some of my friends when I'm in Turkey. I have a little collar that I put around bears, and normally that gives me a GPS location, but when I lose it, I have to go out and I have to find them the old-fashioned way. So I know we have some people from Texas. We have the Phoenix School. We have other locations.
David, well, I'm in Corner Brook, Newfoundland, so I'm about as far from our friends in Cherokee, Texas as you can be in North America. We've also got groups on YouTube joining in Washington State, Maryland, all over Ontario, Nova Scotia. So it's a really diverse, fantastic audience today.
Amazing. Oh, that's so neat. Okay, awesome. So we're from all over. That's amazing. So a little bit about me. So I do study large carnivores, but I didn't always start out that way. So I went to the University of Georgia, where I really got to learn about both animal biology and animal ecology. So understanding not only how animals live, how they kind of work, but also how they interact with nature. From there, I actually went in, I studied flies. So one of the really cool behavioralists of our time really focused on ant behavior and understanding that. And I thought that was so neat. So I went over and I actually studied flies for a little bit. I studied microbiology, the rabies virus. I even went and studied eyes and ophthalmology until I realized what I really wanted to do was come back and study animals. And actually the first year of my PhD, I studied birds. I love the fact that birds are exactly where they want to be at any time. Because they can fly, they're where they're supposed to be. So I took birds around and I showed birds and got to talk about topics like predation and top-down resources and a lot of that. But I also got to put little bands on birds and see how their populations changed. But for me, the most exciting thing that happened was one of my first times in Turkey, I was able to put a little transmitter. We call it a little backpack on the back of a cuckoo, and we let it go. And over the next couple of months, we got to see it go from Turkey all the way down from Egypt. And over the course of a few weeks, I got to put 5 of these on birds, and I got to see where they were going. And I got to ask questions of like, why are they going? How far can they go? How are they choosing to move? Because they're going exactly where they want to go. And I know what you're thinking. This was about bears, wasn't it? And you're right. That was the question. And I realized that that's what I really wanted to do. So I took this and I went to my professor and I said, Dr. Shagargioglu, what do I do? I only have these 5 birds. And he was like, well, lucky for you, I've been tracking bears for 10 years in Turkey. And you can work on that and you can ask your questions there. And I thought that was so neat. And so that year I packed up everything. I went over to Turkey for a couple months and I just dove into the carnivores in Northeast Turkey. Over there, I work with bears, wolves, and lynx, and all three species have really special, interesting problems and things that they're doing to get around a lot of humans. And today we're just talking about bears, though, but that's for another time. We got a lot more stories to tell. So before I even start, a question that I had up until I went to Turkey, and something that I figured I would like to talk to y'all about, is what is Turkey? So before I even, been there, I never really ever thought about it. So I wanted to make sure I got to tell y'all a little bit about Turkey. So Turkey is located in a little bit in Europe, but mostly in Asia. So there's a little connected bridge, or not really bridge. Well, it's bridge now, but a little parts in Europe, but most of it's in Asia. It's right near the Caucasus Mountains, which separates Russia from really Asia. It's near kind of the Middle East, but it's a really unique area. And so there's a lot of different types of forests and land types that are there. It's a really diverse place. So up north, we have these really, really thick trees, these spruce pine forests up near what we call the Black Sea. Over near the coast, we have the Aegean coast is what they call it. It reminds you of the areas that you think of when you think of Greece. Down south, we have the steppe, which is kind of like what you see across much of Central Asia. And then we're a location close to home for me is these spruce or these oak juniper forests, which is kind of these little shrublands. And then where I work, kind of up in the north part, we have these pine forests again. But we also have these really high alpine mountain environments. And so it's a really unique area, but it reminds me of home a lot because I'm from Utah. This is really the kind of forest that we have around here. And so it's fun that I get to go all the way around the world and still feel like I'm back at home. So because they have so many different types of land use and trees and plants, Turkey is really, really biologically diverse. And what I mean when I say biologically diverse is that it has a lot of different types of animals and plants that are really not found in many other places in the world. And because of that, we have these things called biological hotspots. What these biological hotspots are really tiny areas that have a lot of the world's unique plants and animals. And Turkey actually has 3 areas of these biological hotspots. We have this Caucasus area up in the north. We have this Iranian-Anatolian plain kind of in the center. And then we have that Mediterranean basin. So it's a really, really unique country. So the country in of itself has over 10,000 different plant species and almost 80,000 different species of animals. However, they don't have a lot of environmental protections in place. So they rank about halfway in the countries in terms of the environmental performance that they have, but they're near the bottom in the amount of conservation they have. So it's a country with a lot of unique animals and unique plants, but not a lot of protections in place yet. And so it was a really fascinating place for me to study. So personally, this is where I study. So I'm in the northwest corner of the country. And on this map, you can see kind of in that top left, you get to see the Black Sea, those thick bands of trees I was telling you about, that mountain range kind of in the middle. And then as we go to the bottom right, you see that there's fewer and fewer trees. And really the box I have highlighted in yellow, my study site, is one of the last little patches. So now that you know where I'm at, you know what I'm talking about, we're going to go into one of the things that I find the most fascinating, bear capture and collaring. So this is the step 1. So go there and we've got to figure out where these animals are going. So we go out, we capture these bears, and while we have them asleep, we get to see how old they are. So we get to see their teeth. And so this is actually a fairly young bear. We don't use the canines, those big teeth that you see, but we use all the other teeth to really kind of age the bear. And this is not a very young bear, but it's probably 3 to 4 years old. We also take measurements. So this is a photo of me taking a paw measurement, and you can see how big that paw is compared to my hand. They're giant animals. We weigh them. We take samples of their blood so we can see kind of how healthy they are and how they're doing. And with that, we also get to see genetically how the bears are moving through. And finally, we put a GPS color on these bears. And those colors will stay on for about 2 years with those bears. And every single hour of every single day, it will tell us where that bear is. So these colors get to hang on, like I said, for about 2 years on the bear. It stays on the neck, and then after about 2 years, it'll pop off. And there's actually the release mechanism that I showed of the collar coming off. But that gives us data for these bears, and we get to see. So on the map on the left, we have all these little green dots. I hope that y'all can see, and those are locations that these bears have been. That when we found the collar, we got to see where they were at, how active they were. But we don't only have GPS collars. We're actually very fortunate that we also have these things called video collars. So last year was one of the first times that we got to put in a video collar. I'm going to show you a little video that we got. So we put this on a fairly young bear, and something that we weren't expecting is that the bear was hanging out with its siblings probably still. We can't know for sure that it's its siblings, but they're just sitting, chilling out with their family, scratching. And so it really offered a really unique view. There's the other bear of these bears just in their natural habitat. And lucky for me, this is one of the bears that actually ended up migrating. And so it offered a really unique view of what they're actually doing. So we're going to finish watching this video of they go and they kind of interact with the other bear. Get to play around with their siblings. I have a couple dogs, and this is one of the things that was most exciting for me is I realized that my dogs and these bears were the exact same. They kind of nuzzle each other. They kind of play fight sometimes. But it's a really unique way to see exactly what's happening for these bears. So with that, like I said, we get these GPS points. And the really unique thing that we get to do is we get to tie all these points together to see where they're going. And one of the first things that we realized when we started tying all these together is that something unique was definitely going on. So I'm going to play you a little video here. So these are GPS points that are tied together, and we get to see it zoop up there. It's really fast. I'm sorry about that. And come back down. It hibernates. It goes away because it's underground. We don't get any signal. Comes back out, goes around in the summer. And then once again, it's going to go up to this whole other area. At first, we didn't know what was happening. We were really confused. We hadn't seen this in the literature that this was happening. So it really took us a while to figure out that these bears are migrating. And so migration in and of itself is a really interesting topic. So like I said earlier, I'm really interested in birds, and that's one of the things that we always get to see about migration. So this is a barn swallow that a lot of y'all have seen. They move up into the summertime. They're up in North America, almost everywhere in North America, and then they come back down south. But birds aren't the only thing that migrate. So we know that things like whales migrate up and down coasts. Mule deers, where I live, mule deer migration is a big thing. They migrate a very far distance as well. We have salmon that we know migrate. Even butterflies and crabs migrate. There's over 1,000 different species that we know of that migrate, and not all of those are birds. It's almost everything that we find, something will migrate. And we do know a little bit that some bears do migrate. So this is a paper that came out a couple of years ago, about 10 years ago now, showing that black bears migrate for food, especially for oak trees. And we also know that polar bears migrate as well. So they stay up on the ice or on the land, and then when the ice comes, they migrate out really big distances over the ice to get enough food and then come back. And so, but those were the only two species of bears that migrated until we were able to show that these also migrate, that our bears also migrate. And actually really soon after, we found another population really close by that also migrate. And so we're just kind of understanding that these bears are migrating. So the fun thing for me here now in giving this talk is that we don't have the answers yet. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about the information that we have, but I want you to be thinking about what we need to do to figure this out, because I don't have the answers yet. It's one of the fun things about exploring in science is that a lot of times we're taught of what we know, but the interesting things are what we don't know and how we get to figure those out. So one of the first questions I had with migration is, who is doing this? So the first thing we looked at was age. Is it a certain age that's migrating? And so on here, we have our migrants over on one side and we have residents on the other side. And we're just looking at just age. We see there's not really a big difference. So our migrant population is maybe a year older. They're on average 7 years old, whereas our non-migrants are about 6. But in the realm of science, there's not really a difference between those two. Then we looked at sex. So is it just one sex? Is it a male migrating? Is it a female migrating? So on here, we have the blue color, which is going to be our resident bears as a proportion of the population. And in the red salmon color, we have our migrant bears. And the first thing that you notice is there's no difference. So for both males and females, about 60% of our population never leave home. They just stay in the forest where we catch them. But about 40% of both of the groups do migrate. So it's not just an age, it's not just a sex. So we're still kind of trying to figure that out. So if you'll remember, when we capture the bears, we do get a little bit of a blood sample. And recently we found that there's one little site on the genome that is really good at predicting whether or not a bear migrates. And so we're interested in seeing how that plays out over the future and see if we can figure out population-wise maybe what's happening with that. Our next question is, when is this happening? So I'm going to play this video again that we've already done one time while I'm talking, just so y'all can kind of see. But the bears kind of leave home early September. They take about 3 days, but they can take up to 6-ish days to get to where they're going. They really migrate at night. So they start after the sun goes down, walk all night long. And then about 5, 6 in the morning, they stop, they eat a little bit, and then they rest while people are up and at them. They stay on their migration route, their migration areas for about 35, 36 days. So a little over a month. And then they come back home in late October, early November, and it takes them again 2 to 3 days to get home. So this was really interesting to us that it was just happening at this time. All of the bears that we saw were migrating within this little window of September to November. And if you know anything about bear biology, this is a really unique time for them. But I'm going to guess that y'all don't know too much about bear biology, so we're going to talk about it. So everybody knows that bears migrate. It could be turper. There's a lot of discussion on exactly what to call this, but during the winter months, the bears really sleep in dens. And this is actually a den that I found that I was able to see. In our population, the males don't hibernate too well. They kind of get up and walk around, but females, they give birth at this time. And so they really need to have a really good protective den in order to make sure that their cubs make it through the winter. Then we have the post-inning season that I like to call it. This is they're waking up, they're coming out, they're really hungry, but they've also just been napping for 4 months. And I don't know about you, but when I wake up from a nap, I'm a little confused. And so they kind of wander around, they're eating a lot, they're getting ready because the next season in the middle of the summer is the mating season. And so they need to be really strong. They need to protect their areas. They're not really focused on food at this time. But then the interesting part, like I talked about, the time that they're migrating is at the very end of this, what we call the hyperphagic season. So if anybody knows Big Bear Week, this is kind of in the fall when you get to see the National Park Service put up all these really, really fat bears. And this is at that time, this is that hyperphagic season. So these bears can gain over 4 pounds of weight a day. That's a lot of weight. And so one part in Russia, someone sat and just looked at how many calories bears could eat in one day. And there was a bear that ate over 400,000 calories of salmon estimated in one sitting. They just sat there and they wouldn't even eat the whole salmon because there were so many. They would just rip the most nutrient parts to eat just that because they didn't want to fill up on the parts that weren't so nutritious. And we also have these large bears. So this is a photo I've shown further. And this isn't even in the hyperphagic season. And this bear is already 600-700 pounds. For those of you in the US, I said that this is a brown bear. So our grizzlies are also brown bears. So it's the genus species Ursus arctos. And in America, the grizzly bear is one subspecies of that. And in Europe, there's a different subspecies. But they're really the same genus and species, the grizzly bear and the Eurasian brown bear. So the next question is, where are they migrating to? So for this, we mapped out all the migrating bears. We figured out kind of where the areas were. The areas that you're seeing in the photo now, we call home range sizes. And this is really just we circled the outermost points of all of the points that we had. So we know that the bear was kind of staying within these groups. And so we can see there's really 3 different locations these bears are going. The biggest one, the strongest one, is they're really kind of going that north area. Then they're also going west, and then they're going to the southeast. And so that was really interesting to us, especially that southeast population, because I've been there and there's nothing. This summer, actually, for the first time, I was able to go up north, and I got to talk to some people on the ground over there, and it was really interesting. I would ask them, are there bears here? And they would say, only after August 10th. They were very adamant that August 10th, first bears come down, and then they leave. And they actually told me, oh, the bears leave and they go back to your study system and they go eat in the trash. So that was so interesting. That these farmers, they just know, and their grandparents have known this, and it's just been passed down that the bears will be here in the winter, or in those couple months, and they're going to go. But the interesting thing to me was that the areas that they're going to are really different from the areas that they came from. So I'm going to show you another 2 photos here. So the one on the left here is in the non-migratory season. This is every bear I've ever caught, that same exact kind of home range that I was telling you about. So all these different colors represent different bears, and the bears are spending that entire non-migratory season in these really small areas. Then you get to see on the right that during the migratory season, they completely leave these areas. And if you really look hard, you'll see that the areas that they're going to are really different than the areas they came from. So in the non-migratory season, they're almost always inside the forests. But in the non-migratory season, they're really in areas that are open. They don't have a lot of forests. And I went myself to go see this because one of the reasons we know that some bear species migrate is when there's not a lot of oak trees. They really like eating oak trees in these times. And so I was like, maybe there's some oaks there. And there weren't a lot of oaks. But what I did find was there was a lot of farms where these bears were going to. And so they're having a lot of cereal crops, so grains. They have a lot of fruit that comes into season right then. And so that was a little clue that they might be migrating to get to these other areas with this unique food source that they don't have access to back at home. The final kind of clue that I have, and this is a really interesting one to me, and it might come out of a little shock, but right in the middle of my study system, there's a town dump. And this town dump has a lot of bears that come to it. And one night I've seen over 40 bears in this dump at one time in just one little circle around. And so we were curious if bears go to the dump, if they migrate as well. And so one of the things that we saw was that migrant bears are not using the dump at all. But if you're a resident bear, you'll use it a lot. So these points are going to be the percentage of times that a GPS location was within that dump. And you can see for the resident population, almost at some bears are spending a quarter of their time inside of the dump, where some aren't spending time at all. But none of the migrant bears will ever go into the dump. And this is a really unique situation that might have a couple different explanations. So all over the world, bears have been in decline for much of the 1800s to 1900s. Pretty much populations in the United States and Europe and even in Turkey were really, they were hunted a lot. And their populations were down really low. In fact, in the United States, they were moved to only about 2% of their population, or 2% of the area that they lived at, in a very small population. But in 1975, kind of in that time period, the U.S. passed a lot of regulations to really protect these bears. Europe passed a lot of laws to protect these bears. And up until 2000, Turkey passed a lot of laws to protect these bears. And so I'm curious if this migrant population is a way that these bears are avoiding humans, that they know that they don't have access to the dump, but they still need a lot of food. So maybe they're going other places in this really unique time to get the food. So, like I said earlier on, this is still an open question. We don't know why they do it. I was able to put up camera traps this last year. I'm going back to collar some more bears, and we're going to collect scat, which is really bear poop, and see maybe if that's offering clues of what they're eating, who they're related to, where they came from. And then we also just put on another collar where we're able to see maybe what bears are doing. So this is a bear. This is, like I said, he was migrating, and this was during his migration, and you can actually see he's got another bear there, but this was just him walking around, going from the non-migratory area to the migratory area with a relative. So maybe this is something that they learned, that they were taught, that their mother taught them. So we have a lot more to ask, a lot more to find out. And this is a really, really exciting time to be here. So with that, I'm going to open it up and see if anybody has any questions for me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, David. And it's a really special opportunity to go to Turkey and talk about the things that are happening there. It's not a country that we feature very often. And I love the intro where we're showcasing the incredible landscapes. It's a really, really special place. And what a cool creature you have the chance to work on. That is fantastic, man. Well, we are going to go to our classes. YouTubers, if you have any, please do chime in the chat. I'm going to head to our Phoenix School friends first, and then we're going to go to Miss Paget's class right after that. Lots of opportunity for questions. We got a good long time for Q&A, which is always my favorite thing. So Phoenix School, if you want to unmute your mic and come on in to kick us off, you are good to go. Hey, guys.
My name is Jay. I'm in 5th grade. My question was, why do the collars only stay on for 2 years?
Yes.
Yeah, great question. The biggest thing is batteries. So with any animal that we're trying to track, the limiting factor is really the amount of weight we can put on an animal. So we really want to stay under about 3% of the body weight, which is one reason it's really hard to track birds. So we can only track the biggest birds and see where they're going. And likewise with bears, we don't want to put too much weight around their neck and really hold them down. And so the battery is the limiting size. So whenever we put a battery on an animal, we figure out how much weight we can add onto the animal, how big of a battery we can get. And with that, we figure out how many points we can get and when we need to drop the collar off. So for our wolves, we drop them off yearly, as well with our lynx. But for our bigger bears, we're able to get a little bit bigger battery and they can stay on a little longer.
How about that? Thank you so much for the nitty gritty of that. We've actually never had a question quite like that. Cherokee, I'm heading to you guys' Paget's class. Come on in. Hey, guys.
Hi, I'm Mandy, and I'm in 5th grade. And I was wondering if maybe the bears were migrating because of the salmon.
Ooh.
But they were following the salmon.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. So we know that they do that a lot. They move big distances to get salmon. So in Russia, we've seen that. In Alaska, we've seen that. The interesting thing is they don't have the areas they're going don't have these migratory fish like they do. In fact, back in our system, there's actually a little trout pond, and they don't really even use that. So that's that's a really interesting question that we need to look at, because there is actually a really big river that goes through the area they migrate to. And so it's really possible that they might be going there for a certain type of food resource. So that's a great question.
That is a great question. You really briefly touched upon Fat Bear Week, which I really encourage every student should look up Fat Bear Week. The fact in general that you asked about salmon is so amazing because it's truly one of the most known animal interactions in the world is that bears go for salmon. Like almost everyone knows that from when you're really young. And that's really cool. There aren't many examples of that in the world where it's a predator and prey that we all really sort of instinctually think of. So Fat Bear Week does a really, really good job of showcasing that. It's one of the coolest science communication things in the world. And I can't wait for you to check it out. So class is live. We're going to come back to you for a second round of questions. We got one from YouTube, Miss Robinson's class. Clara wants to know if you know about the bear population in Canada. So, of course, you're in Utah. We got talking about Turkey. Anything you can share with us about our Canadian bears up here?
Yeah, so y'all have a lot of bears, and that's actually one of the best things that's really helped the population, even in the U.S., is how many bears y'all have, how many types of bears. So you have some polar bears up north. You have these grizzly bears. And a lot of what we know about bears does come from Canada. I actually have a lot of collaborators that work near there. And it's so interesting to see how they interact with humans near these areas. Because like I said, in the US and Europe, a lot of these populations were really, really low. But in Canada, they've stayed fairly high over the years. So we can really see how long-term interactions between these bears and humans and how that plays out. Bears are really, really plastic is what we call it. They can conform to whatever they're in. And so in these new situations, we get a lot of these weird little things that happen, but over a long period of time, like in Canada, we can kind of figure out maybe the practices that stay around longer.
Way to go. And Ms. Robinson's class is a fellow Canadian. Good for us and our bears. We're going to take one. Speaking of scientists, we got an emailed question in, and then I'm heading right back to the Phoenix School after this. You talked about the fact that you have collaborators in Canada. Where are the people that you get to work from? One of the things I always like highlighting about science is that it's a really international effort. Like, people have the chance to work with amazing scientists from all over the world when you end up in this role. So Turkish scientists, presumably, but can you speak a little bit of the people you work with?
Yeah, so I work with groups from all over the world. So we, for my research in particular, I actually learned how to trap from a guy from Croatia who did his master's there. We work with people in Italy. There's a big population of people there that work on bears. Personally, the people I don't work too much with people in Canada. I just see a lot of their work and get to see what they do. But British Columbia, University of BC, they have a lot of really great researchers there. Even in Alberta, there's some great researchers there. So it's the bear community is really tight knit. It's really neat.
Yeah, and again, that's true whether you're in bear ecology, it's true whether you're in space science, it's true if you're a deep sea diver. Like, people get the chance to work with the coolest people from all of planet Earth if you become a scientist, which is just one of my favorite things about it. David, we're going to do another round of questions. Phoenix School, if you guys have a second one, come on in, unmute your mic again, and take us away, guys. Hey, so many questions. Come on up. Oh, and we'll just unmute, and then we're good.
My name is Ellen, and I'm in kindergarten. And what got you into animals?
Ooh,
Like, what?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So I grew up with Steve Irwin, and he loved animals, and the way that he just showed the beauty of animals and the nature of animals was just so unique that I just loved it. And my mom was a science teacher, and so growing up, I was always, she let me ask as many questions as I wanted, which is, bless her heart for that. I'm sure I asked a lot of them, but I've always grown up asking, questions. And so Steve Irwin really distilled in me that each animal is special, it's unique, it's here for a reason. And that's one of the things that really drove me into science. And then the more I learned about animals, the more questions you have. Each question that gets answered brings up 10 more. And so it's just easy to fall in love with them. And one of the things that I really like to emphasize is you don't have to love a specific animal. So like I said, I came in for birds. I was really interested in birds. But the questions that I had, the interests that I had were farther than that. And so when you love maybe not just a question, or, when you can ask a lot of questions, you can use that with whatever animal you have. And that's one of the things I really, really love about animals is they're all unique. They all are there for a reason. They've overcome obstacles. They have things that no other animal has, and finding out what those are and those strategies that they have are just so interesting.
David, that was a beautiful answer, and it's so nice to meet someone who is equally inspired by Steve Irwin. I had posters of Steve on my wall as a kid. It was like my hero. And I'll say for our classes, Steve Irwin's son, Robert, has an amazing Instagram channel that's all about incredible animals. So if you check that out, it's a really, really cool resource. I look at it regularly. He does some really incredible stuff to showcase the natural world. So if you want to be as inspired as David and I, go check that out when you're done. Miss Paget's class, we're going to head back to Cherokee, and then we'll take some from our YouTube friends. Come on in. Hey, guys.
My name is Asher, and I'm in 5th grade. And I was wondering, how long can you keep the bear knocked out for with how much anesthesia you give them?
Oh, great question.
That is such a good question. So first of all, I would like to say that we have all of our protocols are designed by vets. We have vets with us on staff. Vets do this all. And so that's the really good thing is we're all about protecting the bears, making sure they're great. And it really does range. So we've had bears out just for a few hours, just a really small amount of time. And the thing is with bears, they don't really have predators there. And so there's not really a reason for them to get up and get away really quickly. And so the medicine wears off really quickly, but they're still a little sleepy. And so our male bears will just take a nap, and they're the medicine's worn off, but it's the middle of the day. They're normally napping. So we try to do the smallest amount of time that we can. So every time you give anesthesia to an animal, there's always a risk. And so one of the great things about having veterinarians on staff, that it's their job to think about these risks. How do we mitigate these risks? How can we maybe make some different combinations of drugs? to minimize all the risk of the drugs. And so the goal is not to have the bear out for as long as possible. It's to get it as short as possible. And so a lot of that is making sure that people who know what they're doing are there to immediately start the work so we can reverse all the drugs as soon as possible.
That is such a great question, and we hardly ever get the chance to talk about it. I'm so glad you mentioned the risk involved. I think a lot of people really assume, when I was a kid, I assumed, oh, there's an animal, we can dart it and just do some bunch of things to it. It's a big process to do that. They pretty much universally have veterinarians on staff to make sure that process goes well. It is not risk-free. Sometimes animals don't survive that, so you want to make sure that you're with the best trained professionals to make sure that the animals are as safe as possible. But certainly scientists like David always want to have those animals around for forever. So that's a really thoughtful question. Thank you, guys. YouTube, Miss Robinson's class, you guys have gone crazy. I love it. So they've got all sorts of questions about bear size. We've got Finley wants to know how old the bears get. We've got Tyler wants to know how big they get. And Ali wants to know how tall they get. So if you can speak to some of the sort of physiology of age, height, and weight, that would be great.
That's a great question. So age-wise, we approximate age. So the actual way that you can age animals, this is really unique. You can take a molar out, and just like a tree grows rings every year, teeth grow rings. And so the way that you really pinpoint how old an animal is you take a molar out and you send it to a lab, they stain it with a really certain dye, and you can count the rings and you can figure out how old the animal is. However, there's some pain involved with that. We don't want to do that every single time. And we're out in a really remote part, so we really do more approximate aging. And so we have bears that are over 15 years old. After about 15 years old, we can't really tell how old they are. But we've caught a couple bears, almost 10 years apart. And so we know these bears are getting old. So this year was the first year that we had 6 out of the 9 bears that we caught that were too big to weigh. So our scale goes up to about 660 pounds, around there, 700 pounds. And for 7 of the bears, we hoisted it up, we weighed them, and it just went blank, blank, blank. So that was incredible to see. There are some big bears out there. So, we think our biggest bear is probably 700-800 pounds. But a lot of the bears we get are younger. So the younger the bear is, the more curious they are, the more likely we are to be able to get close and to trap them. So we do have a lot of younger bears, but there's size-wise, I'm going to be real honest with y'all. I don't get close to them when they're big enough to compare it to myself. I'm in a risk situation, and so I manage that risk by getting away, but they're big. They're real big.
I only know polar bears offhand, and I know when they're standing on their hind legs, they can be over 9 feet tall, which is ridiculous. So they can stand at their face level and put a basketball in a net, which is ridiculous. So that's a huge, huge animal. David, we're gonna do one more round. We've had the longest, best Q&A ever. Phoenix School, I'm coming to you. Miss Paget's class, I'll wrap up with you, and I'll take one from Miss Robinson from Olivia in the middle. So Phoenix School, come on in. Hey guys, so many questions. I love it. We only have 45 minutes. I wish we could go all day. Come on in, guys. Who's coming? Dun, dun, dun. We got to pick. We got to unmute. There we are. Hey.
Hi, my name is Arlo. I'm in 8th grade. And I was wondering how long you put the camera collars on for, because I'm guessing the battery doesn't last as long on those as it would for the GPS ones.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we can get about 1 full year of data from the camera collar. And so we actually put one on last year, but we said it did not start recording until this year. So it starts in about 2 weeks, and it will fall off in late October, and we'll go and we'll collect that in late October so we can download all that video. In that time, though, this last year, it's been giving us GPS points every single hour. And so we've kind of gotten a sneak peek of where this animal is. But again, like you said, it's all about battery size. It does take a lot more battery. So this one will only, once we turn on the video camera, it will only last about 6 months.
Yeah. How interesting is that? I honestly, I love learning a lot in these broadcasts. This is amazing. All right, Miss Paget, I'm coming to you in a minute. I'm going to take Olivia's first for Miss Robinson's class. She wants to know, where do the bears sleep when they're on their migration? Or do they?
That is such a great question. And that's one of the things I'm most interested in. So like I said, they walk at night when human population is really low. So migration is really, really, really dangerous. Whenever you go out, just like you, if you were to walk 40 miles, that's going to be a lot more dangerous than if you just stay at home. And so bears cross a lot of roads. They have to, mitigate people who might want to kill them. And so they really find these small little patches of trees that they hang out in. And that's actually a really big question we have. In Turkey, in the very north of my study site, we're actually putting in a really big section of forests that really combine a lot of different biomes together. And one of the questions I have is how far can bears go before they have to sleep? And where do they want to sleep? So that way we can set up this corridor to the north so that bears have enough room to be able to jump from little island to island to island. So far, I'm in the process of literally working on this right now. They go about 10 kilometers-ish, which is 6-ish miles, maybe 7 miles. And then they find a small little patch of trees and they sleep in the trees and they really just stay there. They try to eat as much as they can and wait for nightfall. And then nightfall comes and they go about another 10 kilometers, sometimes 20 kilometers, until they can find another patch of trees. And it's really fun. About 3 a.m., we'll see their little dots. They might be in an area with no trees, and they just take a right, and they go straight towards a little patch of trees, or take a left and find a little patch of trees really at night and go there and stay. So that's
fantastic. That was cool question. Thanks, Olivia. Miss Paget's class, we're going to come to you for one last question live. And I get the sense from David, I know I'm putting you on the spot with this, but if you have any additional questions, classes, email them to us at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. We'll get them to David. I'm sure we can get you some answers in the not too distant future. It's rare that I find someone as enthused as I am about wildlife. So this has been really special. Miss Paget, Cherokee, we're going to wrap up with you. Come on in, guys. Hey.
My name's Caden White, grade 5th grade. Have you ever caught a bear eating another animal?
Ooh, yeah.
That's a great question. So the bears in our area are actually before I even start, I just want to thank you all so much for all these great questions. These are literally the exact questions that I've been asking myself. And so it's so nice to see that this is interesting to other people too. The bears in our area are really, they eat a lot of vegetation. There's not a lot of meat in the system. So one of the really unique things about our areas is that there's not a lot of prey species. And so a lot of the poop that we find right now, especially early in the season, is literally just grasses. And then they get some meat, they get some dump. In the dump, they eat some trash. They might get a little meat there. And then they go scavenge a lot. So there is a lot of cows in our area, and sometimes the cows get sick and die in the woods, and those are used by bears a lot. So whenever we find a dead cow, we'll put up a little camera trap, and we see bears hit that animal really, really quickly. However, I've not personally seen that. Like I said, a lot of what they're eating early on is grass.
Yeah, but I hope you do. Next time you're in the field season, we'll have to bring you back and show some bear carnivore footage.
Oh yeah.
David, before you bring in our classes to say a big thank you and farewell, is there any last message you just want to leave us with about these bears, about your work, about how kids can get out and enjoy nature, like any wrap up line?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I always want to say, there's really two things. Number one, something that I took for granted for a really, really long time was math. And that was something that I didn't do well in school. I just thought that, math was about figuring out angles and stuff like this. But the more I learn about it, math is how we understand the world. It's how we ask questions. It's how we compare things. And really, in order to do the work you need to do as a biologist, you have to be able to say that, something is happening. And the way that we do that, even how we can prove migration, is through math. So I really like to encourage kids. I was one of the ones that every single time I saw something, I would ask, when am I ever going to use this? And I've had to personally apologize to a lot of teachers because I'm using all of it. The second thing is to always ask questions. Yeah. A lot of times in school, you're going to be taught things that we know, and people their entire life, they will do so much research to really narrow that down to 1 or 2 sentences that you can learn in a book. But there's so much that we don't know about this world. Even things like bears, we don't know a lot about what they do. Birds, we don't know a lot about migration. We know they migrate, but where do they go? How do they do that? And as we make new technologies, there's new questions to ask. So you'll learn a lot. But the more important thing is learning what we don't know and how to answer those questions and get excited about that. So the world is open. There's still adventures to be had. There's still questions to ask, and you're in a really exciting time because there's no better time than now to learn how to answer these questions, ask these questions. There's lots of data in the world, and so keep exploring, keep asking questions, figure out what we don't know.
No better message than that. I'm going to make 2 quick plugs for any teachers. If you have students that are super keen on anything, you can always email us. We love finding amazing resources to keep the learning going and get you kids excited about everything in the world. And also go to your library, whether it's in your school or public library, whether it's books or resources. Librarians will help you find the best, coolest things ever. I grew up in a library. I read every single book in my school library. It led me to where I am today. Such a cool opportunity. And honestly, it's my favorite kind of message. So David, this has been so much fun. What we do to wrap up every program, I'm going to bring in our Phoenix School friends in Miss Padgett's class. You guys both want to unmute your microphones and join me in saying a big thank you and farewell. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now, guys. Thank you.